Buying a brand new home in any area is a little bit different than buying a pre-sale, and in Crestview, Florida, it is no different. And although Crestview has a ton of new construction right now, there are some things that you might want to know if you're considering new construction. Let's get into it.
Something that you should definitely know that isn't wide knowledge about brand new builds is that these builders typically use their own contracts. So these are going to be completely different than your standard Florida contracts. There isn't going to be an as-is option versus a limited repair option. These are going to be builder specific. And these aren't across the board for all builders either. Holiday Builders, D.R. Horton, there are numerous to go through. And each one of their contracts are going to be different. And they're going to be of varying length. Some of them you're looking at about 30 pages to sign, and some of them you're looking at closer to 50. Whereas, and that's not an exaggeration, whereas with our standard Florida contracts, you're looking at tops of like 15 maybe, and that's with a couple of addendums. And once we start getting into the various incentives and the ABA documents or affiliated business disclosures, those numbers just add up. But don't worry, we're going to go through what those cover and what you should be looking for whenever you go under contract with a new build.
And just because the contract is a little bit longer does not necessarily mean it's in the buyer's best interest. In fact, most of the time, the reason why they use their own contract is for their own interest. A standard Florida contract is going to have things like earnest money deposit, repair limits, multiple other things that are fairly quote-unquote standard, putting that in quotations for a reason because it's real estate after all and nothing is standard. And the builder contracts are going to have things like, when is your blue tape walkthrough going to be, which we'll talk about here in a little bit? What are the finishes that you're going to add in? What are the differences? What's going to happen if you want to make changes? How much is it going to cost you to make those changes? And many, many other things as well.
In the Florida contracts, they're going to talk about things like repairs and inspection deadlines. But on builder contracts, they're going to talk more about how they're not liable for the majority of things and how if you back out of the contract, they're most likely going to keep your earnest money deposit. And speaking of earnest money deposit, on a standard Florida contract, unless you're using a VA loan, the expectation is that you're going to put down about 1% of the purchase price. However, with different builders, those can change wildly. I just did a contract actually. I was super shocked. We were about to go under contract for this new build, and the builder didn't realize that my buyer was going to purchase it as an investment property. So first they told us it was a $5,000 earnest money deposit, but then when they realized that this was going to be used as a second home and or investment property, the EMD, the earnest money deposit, not even like down payment, but earnest money deposit was $100,000. I'd never seen that before. I was like, Are you sure we're still talking about the earnest money deposit? And she was like, yes, we are.
And a lot of the reason why they do this is to protect themselves and sometimes protect the neighborhood. So if they don't want a whole bunch of people to come in and buy it as an investment and then basically flip them into a rental, then this is one way they can help alleviate a little bit of that. And fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, it's perfectly legal.
The other thing that I wasn't expecting was typically whenever you put in a contract on a property using a resale or standard Florida contract, you're not expected to pay that earnest money deposit until the seller has accepted your offer. There's a written contract that has been signed by all parties. Then you submit your earnest money deposit to the title company. Not with these builders. It's the complete opposite. They won't sign anything until you send them your money. So in this case, it was $100,000 sent by my buyers to the builder's title company before they would sign anything and take it off of the market. So definitely some huge things to be aware of. So if you're considering purchasing a new build, you definitely need a realtor that is experienced in this. So definitely give us a call. I'm AJ. This is Andrew. All of our contact information is on the screen. Give us a call, give us a text, give us an email. We are happy to help you walk through and navigate these waters.
So before we get into the rest of what we need to talk about today, we just want to first thank all of our returning subscribers. And of course, anybody that's finding us for the very first time, there's a beautiful subscribe button you can hit. And then of course, you can ding that little bell right after you click that, and it will notify you every single time we do a new video. So now that you understand a little bit of how these contracts can be laid out and some of the minor things, major things that can definitely affect how you're going to purchase this property, let's go back a little bit to what the negotiations look like with a new build. 9 times out of 10, whenever you are negotiating with a builder, especially the bigger box builders, the big named ones, there's not going to be any negotiating room whatsoever. It's kind of, I compare it to buying something off the shelf at the store. You're getting what you're getting. You're not going to be able to go up to the cashier and say, can I get a discount? Because they're going to go, no, I don't have the authority to do that. And the builders aren't going to do that either. They know exactly what their home is worth because they're getting them appraised one after another, after another, after another, and they know what incentives they want to offer. And just like any car dealer or anything like that, they're going to offer incentives when their sales are low and if they're trying to boost something up, and then they're going to take those away when things are going well.
I highly encourage you to talk to us if you're considering this process, because a lot of times these builders, they won't advertise so much on the MLS what they're offering as far as incentives, but if they've worked with agents previously, a lot of us are on distribution lists with those builders, and they will tell us individually what kind of incentives they're offering. So they're not necessarily providing them to everybody, but as an additional kind of courtesy to agents that they trust, they know are there to close deals, they'll reach out to us and say, hey, we have a red tag sale, or we are offering these specific incentives, and these are the specific properties that we're offering those incentives on, or these are some of the incentives and they're only offered for this weekend, bring me a buyer. So definitely make sure you're talking to someone who knows how to close a new deal, or who knows how to look at a brand new build contract and also has a good rapport with those builders so they know what incentives are available. A lot of these builders, they own, or at least have a partial ownership of a lender, and their interest rates are incredible. I mean, over a point less than what the par is for the rest of, the lender market, if you will.
And speaking of things that they really only tell agents, another thing that you will see if you're looking for new construction is you might notice that the real estate professionals in the area have the inside knowledge on what properties are for sale up there. Because a lot of these builders are not putting them in the multiple listing service, which means they're not going up on Zillow, they're not going up on Realtor.com, any of these other major websites, and even some of the agent websites that you see out there. They're only giving them to the agents and then people with local knowledge. So it's another thing to really take note of. Speaking of closing costs, a lot of people believe that means that they're going to put nothing down. In fact, they actually advertise it that way. $1 down VA special, $1 down military special is a very common one that is out here in our area, and it comes and goes quite often. But the one thing that they don't tell you there is that they're not paying for your prepaids. So that means your taxes and your insurance, you have to prepay for 1 year. This often results in several thousands of dollars, and they don't tell you. And guess when you find out? When you're at the closing table and they're asking for a check. This catches a lot of people off guard. I've gotten past clients that I've taken before that we ended up selling their house, and they tell me about their experience, and they were like, we were told $0 down, and then all of a sudden at the closing table we owed $4,000. We had just moved, we had just PCS'd into the area, we spent all of our money getting kids, and we were in hotels and we were just moving, and gas and everything else, and boom, they were hit with this big bill. So if for any reason you are not working with us, maybe you're purchasing in another area or something like that, have that conversation with your real estate professional to make sure that they're paying for prepaids or not. They are two different things. A lot of people think closing costs include that, and they are not. They are two different items.
Make sure that your agent knows how to read that fine print, because I had it happen very recently, actually, for the property that I'm closing on. I was speaking to the lender because this is a big builder. They own the lender, they own the title company, they own the insurance company, which means everything that I'm getting was super, super discounted and amazing. But I reached out to the lender, doing the typical application stuff, or, well, we were past that point, but just doing the typical going through the process stuff. And she said something about my closing costs. And I was like, well, the builder's paying all of them up to $20,000. She said, no, you're only getting up to $10,000. I said, I'm pretty sure I know how to read a contract. Not in a rude way, but I've been doing this for a little while. I think I know what I'm doing. And she said, well, you would be the absolute first ever. Let me pull up your contract and go over it with you. And I said, okay, sure. I'd rather, know for sure rather than just, I don't need to be right or wrong. I just need to know. And so she goes through it and she said, holy you're getting $20,000 towards your closing costs. That's what it states. You do know how to read a contract. And I was like, there it is. So make sure that whoever you're talking to knows how to read these new build contracts, because they are different.
So one of the great advantages of working with a builder, though, is that sometimes you get to pick your finishes, meaning the types of countertops, the types of cabinets, the types of flooring. But please take note that not every builder does this. This is, a lot of times these are not custom build homes, which are different than what we call spec built homes. So a lot of people think, I'm getting new construction, I'm going to be able to go there and tell them to move the kitchen over here and move the bathroom over here. They are not doing that on a spec build. That is a custom builder. You need an architect involved, and it's very expensive to make movements like that once the blueprints are already done. But going back to what we're mainly focusing on in this video is spec builds. And this is where they've got 3 or 4 different floor plans, and you're going in and you're looking at the different ones and saying, I like this one. And in certain builders, they're going to let you do some of the finishes. And other ones, especially when the market gets really hot, they're going to start eliminating that. Here in our area, one of the most common ones, at least in Crestview, is carpet in the bedrooms, LVP in the main portion, half-inch thick granite, or whichever one they're using for that particular complex or that particular area, because every single new build section is a little bit different. And that's it. You're not getting the choices. Whereas when the market slows down a little bit more, they've got more options and there's more availability on some of these products. They can go, okay, cool. Here are the 3 different types of countertops you can get, and you can match these with these different types of cabinets, and so on and so forth. And then there'll be other builders that allow you to do a lot more. For instance, one of my favorite builders in Crestview and a couple other cities here in our area is Whitworth. And Whitworth has probably the best selection out of anybody I've seen here in the area, short of getting into the $1 million properties and up. And they're giving you everything. I mean, to the point where one of the builder's agents that I like working with out here, she has blue and green carpeting. And I always joke that I'm going to buy one of her builds and put blue carpeting in there. And every time she's just like, no, you're not doing that. You're not doing it. So you have lots of, and that's just 2 colors out of about, I would say probably 15 to 20 that they offer over there. And it's the same with countertops, and with somebody like Whitworth or a similar build like this, you even have options to change around the kitchen a little bit. For instance, in one of the builds that I like out here, you can go from a standard stove that just has the cooktop and the little opening, or you can do them completely separate where it's a cooktop in the counter, and then you've got a separate double oven there. Now that is going to come at a premium, and you are generally, at least in our area here in Crestview, you're generally going to have to pay for that out of pocket. This is not going to be rolled into the loan. This is another misconception that a lot of people think, is that, okay, cool, I'm going to upgrade the flooring, and it's going to be a $20,000 upgrade, and we'll just throw that into the loan. No, you are almost always going to have to pay for that in cash before anything is even touched. They're going to use that money to purchase the actual product itself. And if you walk away, I think you can guess what happens to that money. You lose it, just like the earnest money deposit.
And that's exactly why they do it, because they can't guarantee that someone else is going to like stuff the same way that you do. They already know. They've been doing this for a while, so they know what people like. So if you want to change something to what you like, they don't want to have to try to sell that later on to someone else who didn't choose that. So they don't want to be out of pocket those funds. So it makes sense. It might not, be our favorite thing as buyers, but it does make sense.
It's weird. People do not want to buy that blue carpet with the red countertops. They just think they're going to have trouble selling it. But that is a real thing.
We've kind of talked about some of the pros and cons of using a new builder. Something else I'd like to point out is a lot of times you can get them to put in a fence for you. Granted, you're going to have to pay for it, but if you're like me and you have a couple of dogs and you're like, I don't want to spend a week without a fenced in yard, but I really want a new build. A lot of times, once you get further into the process, the builder will actually allow you to go ahead and have a fence installed prior to closing, which is super convenient because you don't have to worry about letting your dogs out and them going and chasing the neighbor's cat or something, or having to have like 2 giant dogs on a leash in your small backyard, when all you would have had to do in this 45-degree weather is let them out the back door for a little while. Can you tell I'm a little upset about the weather that we had today?
Yeah, actually just the last 2 days, really. It's been kind of cold.
Kind of 40s. This is Florida. Yeah.
It's not good. Now, this is just what we've been seeing in the last couple of years. Please keep in mind that whenever we switch into a buyer's market, like we were at from about 2010 to about 2016, give or take, they were actually adding these incentives automatically. They were giving fridges, they were giving fences, they were letting you do these upgrades. But that is for a very short period of the market. Whenever it has completely turned and everything's sitting on the market for 9 months at a time, it's their way of keeping money coming in. So keep that in mind, that depending on on when you're purchasing or when you're watching this video, you might have a possibility of doing that. Now, make sure that you actually understand if you're in a buyer's market versus a seller's market, because a lot of people believe that they read these headlines and they think that it's a different market than it actually is. Right now, if you're watching this around this time frame in 2023, it is a very heavy seller's market, even if it's not as aggressive as it was in 2022.
Something that you should always do, regardless whether you're purchasing a resale or a brand new build, is get an inspection done.
Yep.
I mean, really, you'd think, oh, well, it's a new build. They've already had to have inspections done to get a certificate of occupancy. Well, yes, however, houses are built by people, regardless, right? Houses are built by people. Wherever there are people doing something, there is the potential for human error. Someone forgets to cross a T or dot an I, who knows? An inspection is just a way to make sure that nobody forgot anything. There's so many contractors, different types of contractors, plumbers, roofers, floors, cabinet guys, all of these folks, and they all play their part. There's so many points of failure. It is it's just invaluable. At least get the inspection for your own peace of mind. And the good news is, once you have that inspection, if there's something that comes up on it, the builder is very, very likely to take care of those items. It's not like a resale house where the seller's going to be like, that's not that serious. I'm not going to do that. It's very different when you're working with a new build. The builder is going to say, oh, okay. Because at the very end of it, you're going to do a blue tape walkthrough where you get to say, there's a nick on this wall, or this wasn't painted. They're going to fix those things. So obviously they're going to fix something that comes back on an inspection report. So make sure you get that done. They'll take care of everything. This way, whenever you get the keys to your brand new house and you move in, you don't have to worry about projects right off the bat.
Yeah, it's very easy for them to miss something because the county is coming in, or the city, depending on where the inspector is coming from, during different phases of this. And sometimes lines get crossed. And it actually happens often. A lot of people think, well, it's a brand new build, so nothing major is going to be there. But let me give you an example of something that actually happened to us here in Crestview. One of our buyers got a home inspection and found out that the roof was not put on properly. They were using a new roofer, the actual builder was. They were fairly new to this subdivision, and they were not spacing the nails out. There needs to be so many nails per square foot on the roof. And I don't remember exactly what the number is, but there wasn't enough. And it was because they were following a different guideline for a different state, is what we were told. So they had to rip that roof off, and 8 others. So that home inspection saved 8 properties. Now, would the roof have been fine? Yeah, probably. Do we live in a place with hurricanes? Sort of. So do you want your roof to stay on during a hurricane? I do. So home inspection, a great few $100s to spend. If they don't find anything, at least it's a little bit of peace of mind.
I know we talked about how a lot of the builds are not going to be on the MLS, but some of them are, which means you're going to see them on Zillow, Realtor.com, so on and so forth. Keep in mind, those are from previous builds, right? So they're not going to be exact. These are just meant to give you an idea of what the style is going to be. It's going to help you to visualize what the floor plan looks like. A lot of times they're even going to be furnished, and your new builds are not going to come furnished either. So take that with a grain of salt whenever you're looking at the pictures and the furnishings and the colors. They're probably not going to be exact. Reason being, so many of the materials get ordered ahead of time, but materials, they change, like so many colors will just rapidly go out of stock. It just is what it is. Everyone starts liking a certain thing and buying up a certain thing, so then it starts to shift, So the builders can't guarantee that every single one is going to look exactly the same, and you also don't want every building in a neighborhood to look exactly the same. Now, in the event that you can't change the finishes, the builder will already have the materials available for what's going to go into the property, so they'll be able to show you just via pictures, what colors you're going to have and what type of flooring, what the cabinets are going to look like. They're going to have all of that available to you. So it's not like you're walking into a house and it's going to have green cabinets or something without your knowledge. You're going to have all the information. It's going to be in your contract exactly what those finishes are going to entail.
Which is part of the reason why the contracts are so long, among other reasons, but that's one of the big reasons. And another thing to consider is the closing date. If you've got a very strict timeline, a new build might be something that either might not be for you, or you need to just be a little bit more cognizant that these closing dates are very flexible. A lot of things can get in the way of a new build. They tell you it's going to be 3 months, it takes 6. They tell you it's going to be 6, it takes 4. I mean, there's just a lot that can happen in here in our area because we have so much random and sporadic rain. it just slows people down. You can't really throw on a roof or, put up drywall if the roof's not up. They wouldn't be doing that at that point, but you get my point. The rain can stop a lot of different things. Hurricanes can stop a lot of different things. In fact, I remember, I believe it was 2019, I had a spree of people buying new construction, and we just had just a wicked hurricane season with just a bunch of close calls. It wasn't even a lot of hurricanes in our area, but it was just getting, one after another, and we were just getting all those bands coming in, and it slowed construction down like crazy. And I had 3 clients in particular that had already been here. They're waiting for their house to be built. They thought it was going to be done a month ago, and they're kind of freaking out a little bit. You need to be flexible with a new build. There's just too much that can happen. Another example is we had one that a garage door didn't come in. It was a custom-sized garage door. It was a little bit taller than some of the other ones, and this thing took 3 months to come in because of the pandemic. It was just bad timing. Pandemic came in. The company that was building them stopped for a long period because they were getting imported in from California, and apparently California shut down a little bit more than we did, and so they had plywood up, just on $1 million home, plywood, So these are just things that you need to consider, that you need to be a little bit flexible, and if you don't have the funds available, or you don't have the patience for it, you don't have the mentality for it, then maybe a new construction isn't for you. But if you're good with all of that, then, well, solid choice.
Depending on the new build that you're purchasing and the location of it, if you're using a custom builder on a lot that you paid cash for that's in an already existing subdivision or kind of in the middle of nowhere, it's going to be a little bit different. But if you go buy a spec home in a new development, chances are you're going to have an HOA. Chances are you're going to have a new buyer fee as well. A new buyer fee is a one-time fee that you pay whenever you're purchasing a property in a subdivision that requires it. Not all HOAs require them, but a lot of these new subdivisions are requiring them. It's kind of helping with, just having those reserve funds for the HOA, which goes towards any of the amenities that the subdivisions are going to have. Obviously, the more amenities, the more fees you're going to have.
In Crestview, though, these fees are fairly nominal. There's not any new construction neighborhoods that I'm aware of that are more than a few $100s per month. But if you go into a different city in our area, they can be quite high. And in fact, not only can they be a new buyer fee, they can also require you to donate to certain things as well, like 0.5% of the purchase price to St. Jude's Hospital or something like that. These are actual things that some of them can require. But again, in Crestview, not something you're going to have to worry about. In fact, I think the highest HOA that I can think of for a new construction that I'm aware of is about $150 a month, or maybe just shy of $200 a month. And that's because it's got a community center and, a cool pool and a little hangout area and things like that.
Very cool.
Super cool.
The last step that we're going to talk about just prior to closing is going to be your blue tape walkthrough. We touched on this a little bit earlier, but we're just going to go into it a little bit more. So with a resale, you're going to do your final walkthrough where you're basically just going to look for things that, shouldn't be there being present, like a squatter or holes in the walls from when, the previous owners moved, and making sure that things are present that are supposed to be there, like a refrigerator, which you're not going to have in a new build. But with the blue tape walkthrough, it's a bit more in-depth. You're going to be looking for paint discrepancies, not like there's this tiny little itty bitty indent that just doesn't match the other orange peel. That's being a little crazy. But if there's raw wood there, or maybe there's like holidays all over the walls, meaning like the underside is coming through the paint and you can tell that it's not a solid finish, or
nicks in the drywall is a really common one because there's people coming in and out with their tools. These are things that you're going to see, and generally in a blue tape walkthrough there's going to be quite a lot of them. I mean, not a ridiculous amount. If there is, you might be being slightly picky, but you're looking for imperfections.
Yep. Just things, human error. Maybe someone forgot to paint a baseboard. Maybe there's some caulk missing in the bathroom, or, a poor paint job somewhere. Maybe they used a new painter. There was a blue tape walkthrough I did fairly recently where I was like, you need to repaint this whole house. It was that bad. Actually, we've had 2 of them. Mm-hmm. One of them, it was just
same one with the garage incident that we mentioned. That one needed the entire paint. There was chunks missing out of cabinets and things like that. Now, this wasn't a spec builder. It was a private builder, and they were a little bit more stubborn. But yeah, these are all things that can happen.
So when you do your blue tape walkthrough, you'll actually take blue tape. They'll give it to you. They will come prepared with blue tape, and you will mark it down everywhere. And you'll make notes at the end of all of it. And it'll be the superintendent of the subdivision that will walk through this with you, and your agent, if it's me. I've heard some agents don't do those with their clients, but we definitely do. So you'll go through and you'll make a list of everything that needs to be completed. And at the following walkthrough, you'll make sure that everything was completed, and you'll check mark everything off of that list. If there's anything still remaining, you won't be able to push back the closing date. That's kind of standard verbiage in the builder contracts from what I've seen, is that anything left from the blue tape walkthrough will not prevent an on-time closing. So they'll create another list that you'll say, okay, all of these items still need to be fixed and they will be taken care of after closing. Typically, it's nothing crazy, but there might just be some items. Maybe they ran out of some weather stripping or something. Somehow weather stripping is sold out everywhere, and it's going to take a week to get it in. It's going to be taken care of. It's basically a contract stating that this is going to extend past closing and the builder is going to take care of it. So you're protected in that way.
Now, don't let any of that scare you. You are going to sign off on that, and they're going to come back and do it. And most of the time, it's pretty minor stuff. Like, for instance, I had one where it was just one of the cabinets wasn't completely lined up, or the drawers, rather, wasn't completely lined up. And sometimes the superintendent will do it right there on the spot, but then other times they need somebody to come in and line it up and things like that. But if you find stuff after the fact, I promise you, you will. Everybody does. Once you start living in the house a little bit, you're going to notice it here and there. Maybe you didn't notice it. An entire door didn't have weather stripping on it, as an example. And then after about 3 months, you notice it was there. The little tip that I give people is keep a notebook in one of your drawers and write down all of these things. You can tell your superintendent right away, and they will come over once or twice. But here's what I found is if you keep doing that, and this week it's this, and then 3 weeks later it's that, and then 2 weeks, 2 months later it's this, they're going to get irritated and they're going to start getting slower and slower. So you have a 1-year builder warranty on most properties. Some will have more, but it's pretty rare, especially in Crestview. They're almost all going to have 1 year. So you do that notebook and you put a big, beautiful date on the front. I literally do it in permanent marker, and I put December 3rd or whatever date it is. It's about a month or 2 weeks before your 1 year anniversary is up. And you open it up every time you notice something that is wrong, and then call them and say, hey, we're coming up on our 1 year. We want to get this list of things done. And then they're going to come in and do this. Now, they're not going to do things that you did. So if you're moving your piano in and throw it through the drywall and there's a big hole there, they're going to know that they didn't do that, right? That wasn't part of it. It does need to be imperfections that happened, during the building process. But you get that nice little list, you hand it to the superintendent. They're going to feel a lot better about fixing that than coming over every 2 weeks to fix one little paint missing and a little bit of drywall here and there, stuff like that.
If you're considering purchasing a new build, whether in Crestview or anywhere else in our area, all of our contact information again is on the screen. Give us a call, text, email, whatever feels most comfortable for you. Go ahead and use that method. We are absolutely happy to hear from every single one of you, even the trolls in our comments section.
And please call a realtor. If you're not buying in this area, you're not calling us, call a realtor. You can use the builder agent. Not a good idea. They have the builder's everything in mind, not yours. Promise. That's all I have to say on that.
Speaking of other agents in other areas, if you're big fans of ours and you trust our judgment, but you're considering a different area because you just don't know how amazing Florida is, we can help you find an agent in that area. We have a wide network, lots of people that we trust, although maybe we shouldn't because they don't live in Florida, and why would you not live in Florida?
That's silly.
Maybe they got afraid because of the 45-degree weather that we've had the past 2 days.
I get that.
But we can absolutely help you no matter where you are, whether it's working with us directly or us sending you a referral to somebody else. We would love to help you. Otherwise, we'll just see y'all at the next one.
See you.